Hi friends, welcome back to your virtual studio. I'm Zuri and I'll be leading this prenatal and postnatal practice today. All we will be needing is 2 blocks and maybe a blanket just to provide a little comfort for our pelvis and maybe for our knees if we do any lunging or any kneeling positions. All right, let's get started in a comfortable seat. Have your blocks nearby so they are easily accessible and we don't have to kind of reach very far to find them later. Make any other adjustments that you might need, whether it's shrugs or little wiggles, until you're able to find just a comfortable place where the breath can be the thing that moves next. Maybe the breath is what we focus on next. Whether it's the sound of the breath or texture of the breath. Go ahead and make any notes about what or how the breath is feeling like right now. We don't have to make any attachments to what we're observing, but can we simply create space for awareness as we greet ourselves and allow this to be a mindful gathering, not just between baby and self, but also between self and self. Let's bring a little movement to the breath next by lifting the arms the next time the breath moves in. And as we exhale, the arms can float down. The breath can stay in through the nose and out through nose or mouth. Perhaps inviting a few cleansing breaths when we exhale with mouth open and seeing what kind of release we may get from that. The other parts of the practice, I'll invite you to keep the lips sealed. Here, breathe in whatever way allows you to simply feel and be present with yourself. The next time the hands move down, let's pause. Left fingertips are going to start to crawl over, inviting the right arm to reach up and over next. Now, if this feels like too much of a lateral bend, you're welcome to use a block to elevate the floor and inviting a little more sense of lift through the left side of the body rather than over compressing. It all depends on the sensations or if you're carrying baby or where you might be carrying baby. Let's shift towards the other side. I'm going to bring my block over towards the other side. Right fingertips or block can move over. Left arm reaches up and over, lateral bend. Let's see if we move through a little flow, side to side. Left arm finds floor or block. Right arm lifts up and over. And we'll dance a little bit side to side. Allow the breath to simply be present. This movement might be a little faster than a full in or out breath. The breath moves as the body moves. Let's pause the next time the left hand is on the floor or block. The right arm is going to reach up and over, still going for that lateral bend. We're then taking the right arm away, opening up. Maybe the gaze moves towards that right hand. Internally rotate your arm. Your gaze can move away from it now. Let's look towards the left as your right arm reaches behind you. And just take a little pause there. Maybe wiggle the fingers as if you're trying to reach for something, right? Notice that we're kind of drawing a circle. Invite that arm to move forward towards your right knee, then forward and up again. Circling, maybe your gaze moves again towards the right hand. Internally rotate, dance. We want to find a little rotational movement for the arm bone. And once that starts to feel like a comfortable flow, see if you do just a couple more rotations in this direction. Maybe it's just 2 or 3. Maybe there's 4. And you'll switch those circles. You can look away when your hand moves away. And you can also just kind of find this organically. It may not look exactly how my gaze and arm are moving. Maybe your gaze stays in one place and just the arm moves. That's all right too. Let's make it about the shoulder more than anything. A little greeting of our arm and shoulder. When you're ready, let's invite a similar assessment to the other side. Right hand finds the block, left arm reaches up. We'll take the left arm away, first into that half T shape. Gazing over, as we internally rotate the arm, we can then start to look away. And see if you find that same flow of reaching up, circling up. Maybe looking back as your arm rotates back. See what it's like to really reach behind you. I think I rushed through it for a moment. But you're always welcome to pause in any curious corners of your shoulder movement or any movement. And circle in the opposite direction. Let's get ready to just meet back at center when you're ready. Take your time. As you realign your trunk and spine, there might be shrugs, there might be movement. Let's come back to a breath as we digest. Let's invite just the left leg to open up first. Rotate your trunk. Your right arm is going to find the floor somewhere slightly behind you, and the left arm can simply reach up and away. This left leg is just kind of hanging out. It is slight internal rotation there. The foot might be pointed, but we're not doing much else, right? It's just a little lift, maybe little lines of stretch you might notice through the front of the pelvis. Let's then sweep that left arm down, taking the trunk back into its seat, shoulders stack over the pelvis. Perhaps a hinge is comfortable if we take the pelvis or the shoulder girdle a little forward. We might do that just one more time before we take the opposite leg out. Switching things out, right leg opens, left leg gets to be tucked in, and then we'll rotate the trunk, finding your left hand onto the floor somewhere slightly behind you. Naturally, this right thigh kind of rolls in, and we're just going to reach the right arm up and over. It's not a big shape, not really a big movement here. We're just letting this right leg hang out, get its own little release, but we're driving slightly more length and space to the right side by reaching with the right fingertips. Invite the right arm to lead your trunk back into your seat. Left knee stays tucked. We can stay upright or find a slight hinge forward. This foot, this leg can still be a little relaxed. You might also turn it on and invite a little sense of pushing down to make this a little bit more of a dynamic action. Let's take the trunk back and just hinge forward one last time. Good. Let's take both legs into our wide leg seat. Left leg opens out. Now, if you are seated underneath some support, I'm going to go ahead and remove the support now, just because I know that as we continue to move, we're going to kind of slide off of that support unless you have a wider base and maybe you're not sliding off, keep it. I'm just coming off to make things a little bit more comfortable for my pelvis, so I'm not sliding off. Now notice what's happening here. Both legs are nice and straight. Point your feet and invite a little stretch now to the top line of the legs. This doesn't require us to hinge forward a whole lot, but you can, and that will change the lines of tension. Right? But just simply sitting up and letting the feet both point can invite a nice little stretch here. Right? So you decide, do you want to hinge a little forward? Maybe it's playing with a hinge and coming back. Let's then find a little stillness again. Relax the legs if you activated them. Let the feet relax again as well. Give them a little wiggle. Sit up nice and tall. Let's bring the attention back to the trunk and to the spine. Letting the back of the neck now feel like it's part of this extension. The crown of the head is reaching up. Let's send the arms forward and up. The legs can relax for a moment. Let's just bring the attention to the upper body. Let's maybe squeeze our hands, make a little fist here. Take a nice breath in. Exhale here, squeeze your fist, squeeze your hands. On the next breath here, exhale perhaps, and you might hinge a little forward again. And then hinge back. Now that tension in your arms is helping us find a little bit of a balance, but you can release that tension when you're ready and maybe let the hands open up. Just keep the arms reaching up if that feels okay. You might be able to decide if you hinge a little bit more, finding still that the crown is reaching upward, like you're presenting something to someone in front of you, but up above. Right? You can feel free to do that 1 or 2 more times. Arms can come down whenever you need. Take this at your pace. When you're ready, the arms can release down to the side. Give them a little break. Move them behind you now. Let your hands find the space behind you. And we're going to get back into the lower body. Flexing the feet here. Internally rotate your thigh bones and invite this movement to happen not from your ankles, but more from your upper thighs. And then externally rotate the thighs. Internally rotate. Externally rotate. 1 more. And the next time that you externally rotate, let's stay in that external rotation. Your pinky toes are moving in the direction of the floor just because they're attached to the leg bones, and that's the direction that they are rotating in. Bend your knees next. We pull up into this bear squat. Internally rotate your right thigh so that both knees and your right hip are going to come and point towards this left side here. And we're going to start to do just a little bit of a windshield wiper, but let's pause here. Let's see what this feels like. Now you can keep your hip off the floor or your hand off the floor and onto your hip, or you might just see what it's like to let both hands stay on the floor and then just let this casual windshield wiper move towards the other side, but pause for a few seconds at first. First one is always a nice little assessment. Does the pelvis want to lift, 'or' 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 Then we're going to invite it into more of a repetitive action. Internally rotate the right leg, then externally rotate for the left leg to come in. Left leg externally rotates for the right leg to come in. Good, and just checking out, the feet can be a little closer together. The sensations may differ just depending on the sensations inside of the pelvis, where baby might be putting some pressure if baby's inside. Today, the legs might be closer. Tomorrow, you might do the movement, or next week, you might do the movement, and the legs might want to be somewhere else, just based on pressure or sensations and how they shift accordingly. Good. All right, let's take a little pause now. The next time that we roll over towards the right, we take a little pause. Let's situate ourselves so that we feel like we're seated and we are well supported. You can use your block or just the floor, but let your right arm be again supported onto either the floor or the block. The left arm, again, is going to come up and over. This time here, we're finding, I'm actually going to let my block go so that I find more space around the underneath of my right armpit, right? So I'm not sinking in, I'm not letting my shoulder kind of shrug or my elbow bend. I'm pressing away. I am letting there be space by letting the right side of my rib cage pull away from the floor. And then inviting even more space by letting the left fingertips intentionally point away and with energy. So we keep that tension going. Good. Now we let it go. Let your left arm open up. Maybe bring your gaze to it. Try to find that internal rotation to lead your arm behind you. Externally rotate your left leg. We're going to make our way towards the other side. Left arm is supporting you now. Right thigh rolls in. Here we are in our pinwheel position or 90-90 position on the other side. See here, if you do need a lift from your block, for me, that makes my left side compress too much, and you might not want so much compression. So we're going to see if hand on the floor gives us that space. Armpit, right, left armpit feels nice and spacious. Left side of the rib cage wants to move away from the floor rather than sinking down into it. Invite your right arm up if it isn't already, and keep the reach, the elevation, the effort of the right arm lifting so that we maintain the space that we've created through the right side. Legs can be relaxed here. They're already placed into their passive hip stretch. Upper body is taking a little bit more of the energy for one more breath here. Good. Left arm, or right arm, I should say, opens up. Take a look at it. Internally rotate the arm. Start to find a place where you can drop your hand. Rotate into your windshield wipers or your hip rotations just one last time. Nice and casual. And then we're going to meet in a wide leg seat once more. So we're going to readjust things here. Legs can widen out. Feet can point or be flexed. And they can do a little bit of both as well. And you might hinge forward for a few breaths. Maybe it's just with your hands here. You have an invitation as well to use your blocks. We're going to stay here for a few breaths before we continue. If you have a bolster or a couple of pillows, you may use a bolster as well. To use in front of you, have your arms over the bolster or your blocks as I have here to support your head and just to give us a little passive release of our lower back and spine. Breathe into the space of your lower back. Or just imagine breathing into the back body as a whole. Let's deepen the breath here, starting to lift the gaze, fluttering the eyes open, letting the light back in. Let's move next towards a tabletop position. Take your time as you pivot the legs around. We are going to use our blocks for this tabletop, so I'm actually going to use them to be my support as I move up. I will set something for my knees now. I'm going to reuse my blanket as a little layer for my knees. Maybe a little thinner. Here we go. And as we find our tabletop position, we are using the blocks to elevate the front of our table. Now this elevates us quite a lot, so let's find our spine from this perspective, tucking the tail for a little cat pose. Lift the tail, lifting the head, a little spinal wave. Now you don't have to take your back bends to a large degree, but just enough motion that each joint still recognizes space to move. Beautiful. Let's take a little pause. Move those blocks a little closer to you if you felt that they're pretty far away, so that we're compressing the space of our table a little bit, but there's an intention. We're shifting the weight here so that we can greet our right hip. Our blocks are going to move closer and over to the left to make a bit of a triangle with your left knee. So your two blocks and your left knee make somewhat of a triangle. Your right knee can lift off because there's now an evenly distributed support system with your blocks and your left leg. Let your right knee start to kind of graze the floor. Maybe it moves forward and it moves back. Now, the more we do this, can we start to activate the foot? Point your foot a little bit more, activate your whole thigh a little bit more. And notice how your glutes, your bum, plays a role here. So think about squeezing the glute each time the knee goes back. Can the knee lift just a little bit higher? Now let's think of making some circles. Let that hip open out and then circle it in. Back, out, forward, in. Can you reverse the circle? Forward, out. Point the knee down, a slight internal rotation. Just some slow circles. Take it at your pace. You can pause when you need to. And once you've done just about 3 or 4 circles, you might take a pause in a seated position or come with me to tuck the toes and sit over your heels. Checking back in with the breath. Let's begin to shift the weight off of the heels and toes, hands back to the blocks. Bringing the attention to the opposite side now. Let's move the blocks towards the right and frame some kind of a triangle with your right knee so that when you lift your left knee off the ground, we are still evenly balanced and being held up pretty well with our 2 blocks and our right knee. Let your left knee bend as much as you can and start to kind of glide or graze that knee forward and back. There's some integrity still in your trunk and spine. And if you're feeling that things are a little shaky, that's all right. The leg is a pretty big part of the body and we're working with some pretty large muscles. So your movement can be smaller or slower. If you're able to, see if you squeeze that left glute a little bit more. Can the left knee lift a little bit higher without doing a back bend, right? Notice that my upper body still hasn't moved. I'm not lifting my chest or dropping into my lower spine. Let your glute engage. It's kind of like donkey kicks, but really slow donkey kicks. Good. Start to find that circular action when you're ready. Can the hips circle out, forward, in, and back? Could be small circles, or they can be a little bit bigger. Circling in both directions. This can feel pretty strong for the base leg, so take a break when you need to. Good, we have strong, strong legs, but they definitely start to feel some of the work when we isolate, just like we're doing here. So take a little seat, optional toe stretch is welcome again. Your next invitation is either a downward facing dog or a puppy pose variation. I'll demonstrate the puppy pose variation, moving towards a tabletop position, then moving my arms forward, inviting my pelvis to draw my trunk slightly back, but I'm staying in this sort of neutral yet lengthened spine. I might grip my fingertips a little bit more and then let my chest start to sink a little bit more. Yet my pelvis is still pulling back towards the direction of the back of the mat or that space behind you. Your other option is to come from that tabletop position, tuck the toes, create a sense of pushing the ground away without moving yet. Unless you just are comfortable already and you're rocking your down dog, do it, enjoy it. Otherwise, stay here, push the ground away. Let's take another breath in. On the next breath, start to then lift the knees, lift the hips back and up. Right, so you don't have to move into this downward dog. You can stay in that puppy pose variation. If you're taking the downward dog, there might be movement in the legs or stillness is optional. Let's move back towards tabletop position. Finding your blocks, bringing them forward. Left foot forward, low lunge. Let's leave the blocks there towards the inside of the left foot and stack the shoulder girdle over the pelvis. Point your tailbone. We're going to mobilize our pelvic bowl here. We're pointing the tailbone down and we're squeezing our right glute. We're also going to invite a sense of letting your left leg slide back. So there's some good, yummy energy in the lower body here. Keep this for a moment, maybe for one more breath, just squeezing and engaging the leg muscles. And on the next breath, see what it's like to slowly round the upper back. Now, just the upper back. Maybe you even just tuck your chin first. Now, once you've tucked your chin, decide if you want to tuck your chin a little bit more. That's going to start to drive perhaps some lines of stretch. And the more you tuck your chin, the more that stretch might deepen. You get to decide how deep you want it to go. That stretch might be at the front of the pelvis. That's some of your hip flexors that we're getting into. And we can also be getting into some of our lower and upper back stuff. Let's slowly roll the upper spine back up. Your tail is still pointed, so that hasn't changed. We're still keeping the pelvis very still. We're just now moving the upper spine, maybe tucking the chin, moving down a little bit more, and then deciding where we find the good stretch for ourselves. For me, I'm going to deepen it a little bit more. For you, it might just be a little tuck. We're not going into deep belly flexion. We're keeping this at the upper spine. Lower back isn't moving anymore. And see if you just do that one more time if you'd like. You can come out of it slowly. Maybe pointing the elbows forward, maybe then reaching your arms forward. Reaching the arms up as you bring your trunk back up. Let the arms reach a little higher. Bend your elbows, cactus arms. Keep the legs nice and sturdy. They're keeping you balanced. Reach the arms right back up. Hinge forward to find your blocks. Tuck the back toes. Let's give a little push into both of our blocks here and lift the back knee off the ground. Just for a full breath in. As you exhale, relower the knee. Full breath in. Exhale, lift the knee. Inhale. Exhale to do the action. So we're doing this on purpose to load things up a little bit more. Exhale to lift. Stay for the in-breath. Exhale to lower. Let's stay here. Heel till the left foot out of the way and invite that left foot back. Right leg comes forward for low lunge on the other side. Stacking the shoulder girdle over the pelvis. Hands can come onto the hips so that you can feel the tailbone pointing down and staying in this position. The more we point our pelvis, the more we squeeze our thighs, the more we invite the right foot to glide back. Let's keep that squeeze, keep your tail pointed down, and then start to round into the upper back, maybe tucking the chin. Your elbows can start to point forward any amount. Pause here, start to just kind of gauge those stretch sensations, whatever lines of tension you may be observing within yourself. Decide how long you want to stay. And kind of come in and out of it. Remember to just keep the tailbone pointed down, keep the energy through the lower part of the body, and the upper body finding the movement will start to target, again, those lines of stretch. Here, if you're feeling it in front of the left hip, in front of the front, at the front of the left hip, we are targeting our deep hip flexors. So that's an interesting place to feel it. Not everyone might feel it there, and that's all right. All right, let's start to come up. See if you, or actually let's add that last one where we brought our arms forward. If you did that one there, let's see if we find it again here on this side. Reach your arms right back up. Keep the legs grounded and engaged. Can the elbows bend and the chest just naturally find a little open space? It's not a deep back bend. Good. Reach your arms right back up. Beautiful. Start to hinge forward, hands on to the blocks. Let's stay, but adjust as you need. I'm going to move my left foot out a little bit. Tuck my right foot, out a little bit. My right foot is forward. Left foot is tucking. I'm going to then lift my left knee off the ground. Let's take a nice breath in here. Exhale to lower the knee again. Stay for your in-breath. Exhale to lift. So we make it nice and slow and engage some very cool dynamic energy for the legs. Exhale to do the movement of lifting and lowering. And it's okay if the breath changes up, but can the pace, can the slow and intentional energy remain consistent? Last one. Let's all bring the knee back down. Heel to the right foot out of the way and back underneath. Optional toe stretch here, back to our kneeling position. Keep your blocks actually where they are, nice and tall. They might help us move into our next shape, a supported malasana variation. So what I will do here is I'm going to use my blocks in front of me and I'm going to push to lift my knees, maybe moving into a little bit of a toe squat here. I'm going to wiggle about. I am opening the legs up a little bit so I can move my blanket, and I'm going to set the blocks, both of them here. You might just use one, and I'm going to use it as my seat. I'm placing the blocks underneath my sits bones. I'm adjusting my legs to move them forward, and this is a great place to stay. Malasana variation. Another place that you might stay is a little bit lower. You can remove one block, sink a little bit lower. Hands can stay to the inside of the knees. Take your pick. If you prefer no blocks, if maybe you have space and energy to allow the knees to hug into the elbows to hug into the knees, while the palms energetically connect and push into one another, this is an option as well. Take your pick. Set where your energy needs to be. If you're using two blocks, you can use your hands. Instead of bringing your palms together, use your hands here as that bit of energy. Press arms into the knees, knees hug back into the arms. So a little dynamic energy here, whichever variation you've chosen. One last breath wherever you are. You're welcome to move towards a standing forward fold where I might shift the weight. If I'm on two blocks, I'm going to shift my weight forward, lift my hips, pivot my legs, grab my blocks to move them out and in front. And here is your supported forward fold, or a supported downward dog variation with wide legs. You can move your blocks further in front of you and see what this feels like with the feet wider than the mat. Otherwise, you can take the forward fold of your choice here. Maybe there are some sways depending on the space you have. If baby's around and inside, you might keep your hands on the blocks. We're making our way back towards the ground. Let's think of tabletop position. If you're carrying baby, you might take one step forward, any foot, opposite foot steps back. Bring the back knee down nice and slow. Tabletop position, move the blocks out of the way. We're taking our final cycle of our cat and cow here. You can also add any other movement. If you'd like to make one more pit stop at downward facing dog and maybe play with a little flow, moving from down dog to tabletop into cat and cow is an invitation. Or you might choose to simply stay in your cat and cow and let that be your flow. Right? So just a couple of options. You can stay low, or take a little trip from down dog, back to table, back to your cat and cow. Let's finish out our cycles and meet in a seat. Pelvis can come over the heels. Pausing wherever you are to meet your breath again. If baby's inside, perhaps you're meeting back with a baby. One hand over baby's home, other hand over your heart or chest. Notice your space, your energy now. How has it shifted? How are you feeling now? Or baby, how's baby? Is baby napping? Is baby moving? Allow the light back in on the next breath if the eyes are closed. And let's make our way into a final resting shape for this practice. I'm going to invite you into a supported side lying position. If you'd rather stay in a meditative seat, just sort of staying as you were, or readjusting your blanket so that it supports your pelvis, you can do that instead. You might also come into a left or right side lying position. Today I am choosing a right side lying, and I'm going to take one block in between my feet and ankles and the other block in between the knees to create a little bit of comfortable space between the legs and hips. As we surrender here, just back to the breath, back to the body as a whole. Inviting an opportunity for body and mind, and perhaps baby, to digest the practice and the energy that you've manifested for yourself and baby. Let's just stay and observe the breath. If baby's inside, you might observe this exchange of energy. Continue to observe, simply returning to your breath each time. Invite a deeper breath in. And take your time as you observe how this deeper in-breath reignites energy and perhaps gentle movement slowly back into the body. As you continue to deepen the breath, invite some gentle shifting. The blocks might move out of the way when they're ready. And in your time, just use your top arm, perhaps a little shifting from your legs. Your top arm will help you press up and away from your side lying position, making your way into a final upright seat. so that we may seal our practice with 3 cleansing breaths. Take your time as you arrive to this final seat. Before sealing our practice, step back into your space. Check back in with your breath. If there is an intention, an idea, or a short-term goal that you'd like to dedicate your energy towards and kind of bring and extend that intention beyond this moment, set that space for yourself here. Even if it's something that you share just between you and baby, whatever it may be, seal it here. Let's seal our practice together with 3 cleansing breaths. Your hands can stay as they are, or they can move together at heart center in Anjali Mudra. A breath in through the nose, and a full breath out. A breath in through the nose, and a full breath out. Final breath. As you exhale, bow to your space and practice, recognizing the power within your breath and yourself, most of all, as your own best teacher. Be well.